Hi safe divers and welcome to Safe Diving. So you guys seem to enjoy my video on my top 5 dive computers, that's up there by the way, so I thought that I'd do the same for regulators. So I have had the privilege to have played with pretty much all regulators that are on the market right now, and while all regulators on the market do have to pass a test before they can actually go into production and be sold, some regulators laugh at this pitiful test and jump so high over this bar that they can't even see it anymore. One of these regulators, in fact, that I'm going to list a little bit later, spent 2 years lost at sea on the bottom of the ocean and still passed the test, which is made for brand new regulators. So anyone can draw up a top 5 list of regulators. It's easy. All you need to do is head over to any website that sells regulators and just change the little sort to price high to low. Bob's your uncle. At the top of your list you have the 5 best regulators available. Well, actually what you really have is the most expensive regulators available. Not necessarily the best, to be honest. And whilst yes, they will have some great materials and performance as well, you don't have to spend premium prices to get a decent regulator. There are some great regulators out there that aren't at the top of regulator manufacturers' ranges, and as Goldilocks found out, sometimes the sweet spot is somewhere in the middle. So let's take a look at 5 of my favourite scuba diving regulators on the market right now. Atomic Aquatics are much like the Ferrari or the Lamborghini of scuba diving regulators. Whilst expensive, they are precision manufactured machines and they are very, very swish. And as with most expensive sports cars, it's all about the little unseen features that kind of make it all great. Like the automatic Venturi control on the T3 second stage. On most regulators you'll have a little switch for you to manually redirect airflow to prevent a free flow, but that wasn't enough for Atomic, so they designed a fin that sits on the inside on a flexible swivel that reacts to airflow. That way you still get a regulator that interrupts a free flow before it becomes a problem, but you keep the good airflow to reduce your work of breathing. The little things start adding up. And talking about things adding up, the T in the T3's name stands for titanium. In fact, all of the letters in Atomic's regulator's name stands for the metals they're made from. But titanium is a premium material to make regulators from, which is both very, very strong and also very light as well. So for traveling divers, it's an amazing material for your regulators. There is a caveat though, titanium is rubbish in really cold water and it can get a tad excited with high oxygen mixes. So if you're doing some really advanced stuff in the cold or with more than 40% oxygen in your tank, then I'd probably look at something else. But if you do want a premium regulator with a fantastic finish and great breathe for recreational diving, then you can do a lot worse than the T3. SCUBAPRO makes some great regulators, and whilst the A700 is the shining diamond at the top of their range and the G260 has a special place in my heart because I just love the kind of industrial vintage style of it, the S620, or to give its full name, the S620 Ti, is the Frankenstein's monster of a regulator. Only instead of taking bits of dead bodies and stitching them together, SCUBAPRO hand selected the best features of their entire regulator range and moulded them together into a finely tuned machine. The S620 has a smart, compact little body and the looks to go with it. Inside, the titanium barrel reduces a little bit of the weight to reduce jaw fatigue and also to eliminate any corrosion on the inside. It also tends to be paired with the Mark 25, which is a great first stage. It's a 5-port swivel turret which allows for all sorts of setups, and it's kind of on your hoses too because they don't get bent at the kind of the ferrule as much as with just a normal port. Inside the first stage, SCUBAPRO went in kind of an odd direction by not environmentally sealing it in a traditional way. They coated the exposed parts in a Teflon-like coating. So this treatment helped prevent ice from forming up and clogging up the moving parts inside. There are some submarines that are actually using the Mark 25 to regulate the internal pressure. So if there are submarines that are using this first stage, then I'd be pretty happy using it too. Objectively, the XL4 Plus is probably the ideal regulator for almost any scuba diver. The second stage is tiny and lightweight for travelling, but the light second stage also helps to reduce jaw fatigue because you don't have the weight of a big clunky second stage that you have to bite down in your mouth. The first stage is cold water rated, it's basically a modified DS4, and the reason why the Plus is on the list instead of the regular XL4 is that first stage. The first stage on the regular version only has a single high pressure port. The Plus has two. So this just kind of eases my need for balance on things, and I get that on most setups you only really use one high pressure port, so the second is just another failure point to go wrong, but I like that you can mount it either way, so it's nice and neat and you can have just mirroring first stages. The second stage is a smart little thing with a nice purge button on the front of it and not too many twiddly bits neither. The white and grey doesn't really put me off. When I first saw it I was kind of surprised they went for white, but it has grown on me. I mean, black is a very standard colour while scuba diving and most of my gear is already black, so it would be nice to see something a little bit different. And whilst yes, the XL4 was made to be a stage regulator and it's inspired by the light travel regulator, the Flight, it has a standard size thread so you can actually attach any sort of length hose that you like. So this is the second regulator from APEKS on this list, and again I promise this video isn't sponsored by anybody, but if you've seen my own gear videos up here, then you'll know that I dive the XTX50 regulator with a DST first stage. The XTX50 with a 5-port DST is one of the most flexible regulator designs, so it can be configured to any style of diving. The second stage itself is ambidextrous. If you need to route your hose in from the left hand side for whatever reason, you can do that, and you can even change the exhaust here if you want something a little bit smaller. But also the plastic of the second stage has antibacterial properties put into it to help prevent some nasties from growing inside of your second stage. But the main reason why I went for the 50 instead of the 100 or even the 200 is in the first stage. The FSR and the XTX 200, whilst it may perform better than the DST and is available in a 5-port configuration too, my heart is always going to go towards a swivel turret for flexibility. But there's the MTX-R and the MTX-RC, I hear you ask. And whilst yes, the MTX-RC is a great regulator, the RC is basically an XTX50 on steroids, I don't really need that much cold water performance in my regulator. I'm not heading back to the Arctic Circle anytime soon, and the second stage is pretty big in your mouth, so it's a bit of a weight. Right before this stay-at-home all fell upon us, AQUALUNG were actually lining up to release a new generation of the Legend regulator, which for some reason has always been overlooked by many divers. It's great. The new generation of Legend regulators, this time spelt with a 3, I actually had the honour of seeing at the factory, and they're pretty smart. Of the 3 options, I chose the MBS instead of the Elite, not just because my favourite colour is blue, but they're actually very similar, and the MBS does kind of the same thing, just in a slightly different way. MBS stands for Master Breathing System, that you have to say quite carefully on video. But whilst the Elite has separate Venturi lever and breathing adjustment, the MBS actually brings them together into one thing, so you only have one twiddly bit to look after. That way when it's out of your mouth, just dial it all the way in and the regulator is primed to prevent a free flow, dial it all the way out for premium airflow and breathing performance. The first stage is a bit of a beast, but for cold water diving, it's exactly what you want. Small first stages are great and all to reduce weight for travelling, but for actual performance, especially in cold water, you want something big, and these are the kind of heatsink fins that you actually want on your regulator to keep the first stage from freezing over. You want something nice and big. Would I prefer it if it were a 5-port swivel turret? Sure, but for most regulator setups, this is actually great. Now, if I were to build my own personal regulator, I'd probably take the bypass tube and the metal body from the Mares Abyss regulator. That was a lovely regulator, and then I'd make that into some kind of side exhaust second stage, a bit more like the Poseidon Cyclone without any twiddly bits and moving parts. You don't need those. Titanium would be cool, but for cold water performance, I'd probably stick to marine grade brass or even steel. The first stage, as you've probably guessed by now, would be a 5-port swivel turret, but it would be a hybrid between kind of SCUBAPRO's Mark 25 and APEKS's DST. I prefer the full-on environmental seal so that nothing can get into the working parts, a lot like the DST, only the DST doesn't allow a hose to fully rotate around the axis because the hose can get stuck on the A-clamp or the din wheel. But what would your ideal regulator feature? Do you like having the control of airflow and swiveling turrets, or do you just prefer something a little bit different? Do you like a side exhaust second stage, or have you even tried one? I think at the moment, the only brands that still make them are Poseidon and Hollis. Anyway, let's discuss regulators down below. Okay, so thank you very much for watching this video. On my channel, I upload videos on Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays, all about how to be a better scuba diver. Now, I've been working in and around the diving industry for quite a long time now, and I have a lot of advice that I can help you out with. So if you need any help or advice with your diving, just let me know in the comments below and subscribe to my channel, and I'll probably make a video about it to help you out. So, if you want to, you can click here to check out one of my latest videos on how to upgrade your equipment and your diving as well, and then click here to check one of my scuba diving advice videos. Thank you for watching, and of course, safe diving.